Should you train gi or no gi grappling for self-defense? First of all, let's address the elephant in the room. Grappling by itself will not address all of your self-defense needs. So we're not really going to talk about the other aspects of self-defense not addressed by grappling. This is specifically on whether or not training a form of grappling with a gi, a jacket, a kurtka, if you do sambo, is better or worse than training in a no-gi type situation where, the common uniform might be a rash guard or a singlet. Grappling by itself is not optimum for self-defense. What are the benefits of training with a gi for self-defense purposes? Well, one of the big things that comes to mind is that you're going to be defending against grips on your clothing a lot. So this has a direct translation to self-defense. If somebody grabs your sleeve, you've gotten used to fighting that off. If they grab your collar, you're used to fighting that off. So after a few months of training in a gi grappling environment where you're constantly fighting off the grips, if some untrained yo-yo, grabs you somewhere, you probably won't even have to think about, get off me, right? The other benefit offensively is, for my money, probably the amount of gi-based chokes. If the objective is to end a fight quickly and you don't have an opportunity to escape and you're tied up too close to really throw any substantial strikes, a choke can put somebody on Dream Street, almost certainly, right? And of course, there are many more chokes available in a gi than are available without a gi. So you have your single wing choke or kata hajime, you have cross collar choke, you got Ezekiel chokes, loop chokes. I'm not going to sit here and name every choke, but a bunch of that stuff goes away or needs to be heavily modified without a gi. So by training in a gi, you can get used to the idea of, if you've got one hand in the collar, you're just a movement away from applying some sort of choke, which can end the fight by rendering the attacker unconscious and giving you an opportunity to escape. There's also the advantage of learning how to use different parts of the attacker's clothing for leverage. So, you'll see various throws, controls, by use of gripping the, into the armpit or over the back and into the belt, or, in controlling somebody on the ground, you get used to grabbing, the cuff of the pants to pin the guy down, or the back of the collar, and just dropping your weight into it so that you're not trying to muscle the guy down. But also you've effectively limited the movement of his shoulders. So by training in gi grappling on a regular basis, you also get used to the idea of, how do I use my opponent's clothing against him in a way that allows me to set up throws, to get better controlling positions. It's tremendously helpful. Now, what are the benefits of training in grappling and getting used to grappling without the gi? For me, the biggest thing is how transferable it is, because anything you can do without a gi, you can do in a gi. So while there are certain techniques that rely on a gi, if I'm used to training without one, then everything I do will still be useful, no matter if the guy's actually wearing a gi out on the street, or whether I get attacked at the beach and the guy's shirtless, or, no matter what the circumstances are, my techniques are not dependent upon a certain item of clothing being worn. So the drawbacks of training gi grappling for self-defense, as I've already pointed out, there are certain techniques that rely on your opponent having some type of gi or jacket equivalent. You know, if you are used to almost exclusively controlling someone with a gi, you know, with that collar grip or nice grip on the sleeve, and suddenly that goes away, you can still try to transfer some of that without the gi, but if you don't have a whole lot of experience, it's going to be much harder. And sometimes if you do encounter an opponent wearing clothing, it might not be the equivalent of a gi. If you get so accustomed to that sort of control and your opponent isn't wearing it, then that can throw you off your game. What are the disadvantages of training exclusively no-gi grappling? If you happen to be wearing clothing that can be grabbed, and you're not used to fending off clothing grabs, you're going to miss the skills that go with that. One of the most common forms of attacks, or a set of forms of attacks, begin with grabbing the clothes and hitting the guy, you know, grabbing the clothes and pulling the guy in for, you know, a headbutt or something like that. A clothing grab itself is not a meaningful attack. It's usually a way to control someone and prepare for a bigger attack. But again, if you haven't built up that instinct of, oh no, something bad is going to happen because he's got a hold of me, you know, by training in that, you know, gi-based environment, if you were preparing for self-defense, you might be missing that part of the equation. So what's the solution? If at all possible, train both. You know, my personal preference would probably be to train 75% no-gi, because again of how transferable it is, but then spend another 25% of my time training in a gi. For self-defense purposes, I think it's incredibly important to learn and get used to fighting off the clothing grips, you know, by someone who's good at gripping clothing. If anybody's ever been grabbed by any, you know, long-time grappler, they have that, you know, killer grip. And if you can fight off their grip, again, some weirdo on the street who's trying to pick a fight with you isn't probably going to have that same resistance when you meet them. So obviously, when you're thinking about self-defense, you have to structure your overall self-defense program based on what you think your needs are. But when it comes to the grappling portion, again, here are the benefits of training in a gi. Here are the drawbacks. Here are the benefits of training no gi. Here are the drawbacks. It's best to do both so that you are not at a disadvantage due to your own ignorance. If at all possible, train both. It's fun. It's good for you. And that's all I have for today. So I'll see you guys next week. Thank you.